Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast, a winning edition of the podcast. Get back into the winning ways. Cats beat the Oklahoma Sooners 83-82. Host Cameron Johnston, Jacob Boyer's over there. Jacob, a reunion of sorts for Otega Oweh, goes back to Oklahoma, where he played 2 seasons underneath the same coach. 28 points, 18 of our final points, the game-winning shot, the game-winning block. Otega Oweh did it all in this game. Such a roller coaster of emotions throughout the entire game. What do you think, and how are you feeling during the game?
Yeah, roller coaster of emotions, I think, is a great way to describe it. But, I mean, for me, this, and like everybody else, it's just going to be remembered as the Otega Oweh game. Absolutely unreal performance in the final, 8 minutes of that game. Back and forth for most of the game. Kentucky, it looked like early, got off to a good start. Oklahoma, with like the worst environment I've seen from an SEC school, especially with Kentucky rolling in. I mean, they're giving away $2 beers and free tacos, and
Is that real?
that's
Is that real?
yeah, I think so. I mean, they were throwing the cans after the game, so there were some beers in the arena, but like still couldn't even get a good environment. It's not a very good Oklahoma team. So it just felt like a game Kentucky had to win, and Oweh just essentially said, like, we're not losing. And down the stretch, he was fantastic. I think pretty much from the moment that you text me and said he wasn't playing good, he went off. But I mean, I agreed. He got off to a very, very poor start, but man, the old saying, it ain't how you start, it's how you finish, and it proved to be 100% true with Otega down the stretch there, and just an unbelievable final 8 minutes.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think with about 12 minutes left in the second half, I think word for word what I sent you text-wise was Otega's playing god-awful right now.
Yeah.
And through that time, Otega wasn't playing well, and Amari Williams wasn't playing well. Jackson was already out of the game at that point. Just felt like nothing was going right. Especially as of late, if we don't have Otega and Amari, we just don't have chances to win games. And at that point, boy, it was really looking tough for the team.
Yeah, and I thought like Kobe Bryant, especially in the first half, played really well to kind of keep you in it with 7 rebounds. I thought it was one of his better games without scoring the basketball, and I thought, like I said, he was a huge reason we were up. I thought at halftime, and then just little moments here and there. There were a couple times, like early in the second half, I thought Kentucky would find a way to pull away. They kind of let Oklahoma hang around in the first half. There were some moments to kind of get that lead up to 10 plus, and we just never really could. And right when Kentucky went down 5, I thought for sure they were walking out of there with a loss, and Otega just did his thing. And I mean, I don't know what else you can say other than just a spectacular performance in the final 8 minutes. I don't know how else to describe it.
It's really just Otega Oweh and him carrying this team to the win. It's really, I mean, we're going to talk about it for 35, 40 minutes, but that's really what this boiled down to, especially, 21 of his 28 points were in the second half. I mean, the guy was just clutch in multiple ways down the stretch, willed this team to a win. I mean, what more could we have asked for him, especially, coming off his worst game as a Wildcat, that Alabama game. And through the first, 30 minutes of the game, it looked like he was continuing that stretch. Boy, he turned it on. And I think even Pope said he was playing really bad until that point. So, if Coach Pope says that, I think, I feel a little vindicated, even though my text right after I sent it to you, I tell you what, man, these reverse jinxes for me, they're working anytime. So I tell you right now, I ain't picking Kentucky to beat Auburn, because right now my reverse jinx is like 10-0.
Yeah, no, it was the perfectly timed reverse jinx, because it felt like right after you texted is when you made that first 3, and then kind of just went on and dominated from there. But yeah, I mean, there were other guys I thought played well. There were some guys, I know we'll kind of get into it. I didn't think played all that great, but yeah, at the end of the day, 5, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to be talking about this game and, the performance Otega had down the stretch at Oklahoma. It'll be one of those moments, I don't know if it's quite, it's not up there with like Malik Monk or Jody Meeks, but as far as like an 8-minute stretch, I don't know if we've seen someone just take over a game the way he did.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be up with those, just because, obviously Jody was against, rival Tennessee, and then Malik Monk was on a Saturday in the Champions Classic. So obviously, there was little bit more riding on those games, a little bit more eyes on it. But I mean, for Otega Oweh, I'm sure he wanted to put out his career high in this game like he did. And obviously, we're going to talk about other guys in this one, but we have to give Otega's props. I mean, just going through the stat line that he had: 28 points, 6 rebounds on 12 of 21 shooting, 3 of 5 from the free throw line, and he missed one back to back. And that's when I was like, oh man, come on, here, this is it. The free throws are going to kill us again. But started knocking them down when they were needed. And I mean, really, just what can we say from Otega? Really, after the first 30 minutes of the game, after that, took over and really just willed his team to a win.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that he made the game-winning block too, right after making the basket.
I brought it up.
Yeah, he was but first one to kind of get a hand on it. I mean, just an unbelievable stretch. Go down, make the shot with 6 seconds, and then come down on the other end and block the, their best player. And you really just can't say enough about it. I don't know. There's not words to describe, I don't think, the last 8 minutes.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, when's the last time you could think of somebody scoring the team's last 18 points? I mean,
I would assume it's never happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a ridiculous stat that you're not going to find anywhere else. But, I mean, why we needed Otega so much in this game was certain guys got in foul trouble early in this game.
Yep.
Amari Williams, probably his worst game since SEC play started. Only got 8 points in this game, 3 rebounds in 19 minutes. Really just was almost a non-factor. Played solid defense down the stretch, but wasn't a game that you wanted to see from Amari.
No, early foul trouble. Just felt like those early fouls really just kind of took him out of rhythm. And then also, obviously, tweaking the ankle, does that as well. But he just felt like he could never really kind of get into the flow of this one for, whatever reason, whether it's fouls, the ankle, and we'll talk about BG, but obviously he steps up in a huge way in a game you had to have him because you weren't getting much from Amari. Andrew Carr was in some foul trouble, so not his greatest game. Like you said, probably his worst since SEC play started, but hopefully he can bounce back and have a huge one on Saturday.
Yeah, and just what we've been talking about. I mean, Andrew Carr plays 19 minutes, Amari Williams plays 19 minutes, and Brandon Garrison plays 26. I know if you would have told both of us that going into this game, we would have been on the edge of a cliff for sure.
Not me, number one Brandon Garrison fan.
Number
one BG supporter on any podcast.
If you guys want to verify that, go back to the last podcast where I was actually the one defending Brandon Garrison, even though I never thought I would be there. But yeah, I mean, Andrew Carr, even when he got the 2 early fouls, but didn't really see the floor much after that. He really couldn't guard Jalen Moore. Seemed like that was the reason why he wasn't on the court. Really, BG stepped up. You saw his lateral quickness, able to, handle the guards, handle fears out there as well. I think that was a main reason for seeing Andrew Carr only play 19 minutes. Carr had 7 points and 3 boards in that time. Played all right, but really just, again, kind of like we said with Amari, wasn't really a huge factor in the game.
Yeah, Carr, this was just kind of a weird one. He was another guy I didn't really feel like could get into a rhythm. To your point, he struggled a little bit on the defensive end in this game, and just couldn't really get the flow going. He did have a couple good baskets. Made a big 3 there early in the first half. But yeah, not obviously not his best game, but you got some other guys to step up enough when you needed it.
Yeah, and it seems like whenever Andrew Carr does make a 3, it's just nothing but net. I swear, he doesn't.
It's pure.
It never hits any rim. But when it goes in, he might only shoot 30% from 3, but whenever it is, it's so pure.
Yeah, it's pure. Jackson's like that too. I feel like the ones he makes are just all nylon.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Jackson obviously in this game only played in the first half, only 12 minutes. I think he airballed what was his second 3, or barely even nicked the rim on his second 3. A little worrying to see after the first 2 shots. A wrist injury on the shooting hand. You see 2 shots that really aren't close, but then follows it up with back-to-back made jumpers. Goes 3 of 7, 7 points. Really, I think the thing to notice with Jackson is just how much different that Oklahoma defense was playing us as opposed to weeks before when Jackson wasn't on the court. You can just see the attention that the defenses have to pay when he's out there. It really just opens up the entire floor for the team.
Yeah, I was going to make that point about him and Lamont. Just everything is just so much more spaced, and I noticed it quite a few times with Lamont, like, it's not even the threat of him like getting to the rim and finishing. I know we kind of have gotten on him in the past for finishing, but he just draws so much attention, and he made a lot of really nice passes. The offense in general, when both of those guys are out there, is just so much more open. It gives guys like Andrew Carr, more area to kind of operate. It gives Amari kind of more of a one-on-one in the post. So, I mean, it just opens everything up so much more by having both of those guys out there. In regards to Jackson, kind of felt the same way you did when he, his first three was way off, and then that second one was the air ball. I was a little nervous, and then comes right back and swishes his next one, and made a couple other mid-range jumpers, and I thought he, I don't know what the wrist feels like. You saw him ice it the entire second half. I don't know how much it's going to linger. I don't really expect to see him play Saturday, but even if you can get him back, maybe like LSU or Missouri, just kind of this game plus one of those, just to kind of get back in the flow of things before the postseason.
And, I kind of talked to you about this a little bit before we hopped on the podcast, but I wonder if that was something that was planned from Jackson. I don't think they planned to play 24 minutes, which is what he would have been able to go in this game. Because I didn't see a certain play in which, before the half would have taken him out for the game to where they showed it. So I wonder if this was the plan. Obviously, I haven't heard Pope speak since the post game about the injury. But I do think they're just trying to ease this team back together, gel them together before tournament time, before every game matters. And I think, even for SEC standings, this Oklahoma game, while, they're not good, this meant a lot for us.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about it a little bit later in the podcast. I mean, there's still a potential chance for us to get a double bye and get the 4 seed if all things were to work out. Tennessee were to lose a lot of games. But, I mean, just huge for SEC standings, just based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you lost this game, with Mississippi State's schedule, you're very easily looking at possibly playing on Wednesday. Having the tiebreaker over Mississippi State, essentially, if you just come out and beat LSU now after winning last night, you have this one, you have, at least a bye locked up, right? And, now you can start thinking, well, maybe, I know there's a possibility to get the double bye. Obviously, you need like a ton of things to go right, but maybe you can just look and try to get on the other side of the bracket other than Auburn, right? And then when you're then on Friday you're not playing Auburn, you can play Tennessee or Alabama, who you played twice pretty well, and obviously you've beaten Tennessee, so I think it kind of opens some other stuff up, and even without getting the double bye, it could help you if you can find a way to jump like A&M and Ole Miss.
Yeah, and just purely from my vantage point, just this team getting to the 6 or the 7 seed, they play on six or and then 25 minutes after that game. So I mean, just for the fan viewing, I mean that'll be great. Not having to see every game at noon.
Well, yeah,
next game doesn't have to be right at Auburn, like you mentioned. It can be Florida or Tennessee or Alabama. Somebody you probably feel a little bit more confident in, and we play a better brand of basketball against them than we do. Auburn.
Yeah, we talked a week ago or whatever on here, and I said it was essentially Kentucky's either going to get the 8 or the 9, and regardless, they're going to play at noon every day. Noon Thursday, noon Friday. If you make it noon Saturday, and championship on Sunday. Now, that there is a possibility. Where the big thing for me is just, can you get away from Auburn? Like, if you can find a way to face Auburn in the championship game, I'm not saying they're going to go down there and beat Alabama or Florida or whoever you get matched up with, but I like our chances against those teams a lot better than I do going up against Auburn at noon on Friday.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been helped out a lot. I mean, Ole Miss has lost 3 straight, Mississippi State has lost 2 straight, and A&M, who's still above us, has lost 3 straight. So, I mean, we're getting lucky at the right times. Obviously, we have to capitalize. We did on Wednesday. So, I mean, good to see the team, finally start to get back, starting to get a little healthier. And speaking of a little healthier, Lamont Butler was able to go 20 minutes in this one. Some pretty bad foul calls on him, I thought, late towards the end of the game. Allowed him to foul out in this one. But 7 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, which is what I thought he really brought to the table in this game. I mean, just his ability to drive, get down there. He's actually finishing well, even with the bum shoulder. I thought this was actually a really good game from Lamont, even though the stats really don't indicate that.
No, I agree completely. I mean, if you told me he was going to play 20 minutes, 20 limited minutes, especially with foul trouble and everything, I think he gave you kind of exactly what you hoped for. To your point about a couple of the foul calls, yeah, I thought a couple of them were bad. The last one even got Pope to cuss on the sideline, so
That was
we
awesome.
got to see that for the first time. Um, but yeah, I thought he played well. To the point I made earlier, like he really just opens everything up so much, and like you don't think of him as like our prolific offensive scorer, right? Like you got Otega, you got Jackson Robinson, you got Kobe Brea when he comes in, and even Andrew Carr and Amari probably at times can feel a little better having the ball in the post. But like Lamont just brings so much to the table just by really being able to beat his man off the dribble. And the area that it's different from Otega is he's not always looking to go up with it, right? Right when he's getting a driving lane. I mean, there were multiple threes that guys just missed that were open, and it was all getting set up by Lamont just breaking down, fears at the top of the key and getting in the lane, and people have to help out. So I thought he looked really good. You just see how much better this offense looks when he's on the floor.
Yeah, and the big thing with Lamont that I think really, takes his team to a new level is not even necessarily the defensive side of the ball, which is what most people say. It's just the speed that he brings
I
his
agree.
team. We're able to get up and down the court faster. I'm not comparing him to these guys, but just think about, the fast guards that we've had in Kentucky's tenure lately. The Aaron Fox, how much of that speed changed the game for us. John Wall, how much that speed changed the game for us. That, I mean, obviously to, a slightly lower degree, but it just changes. It gives us so many more open looks. And, like you mentioned, unlike, Otega, he's looking to pass out of a lot of those because,
Yep.
trust me, if there's one thing Otega is not looking to do, it's the pass. If I had to guess, I would assume he probably has the worst, turnover to assist ratio in the country. Because, I mean, even in this game where he was excellent the last 12 minutes, still had 4 turnovers and no assists. Otega's not looking to pass the ball,
No.
especially in that Oklahoma game. But, hey, it worked out, scored the final 18, so.
Yeah, no, you needed. It's funny because like everything we complained about in the last few weeks was like what won us this game, right? We talked about how we couldn't just keep watching Otega just take it to the rim. That's all he does the final, 8 minutes, and it works. And then, BG, there's not a player I've been more critical of. I don't know if honestly ever. Like, and he does everything he can to get you a win on Wednesday night. So literally everything that like I've bitched about for the past 2 weeks was everything that kind of won you this game.
Yeah, I think this was Pope, looking at both of us and saying, "Here's the data
Yeah.
that
Yeah, right.
this is it right here. Everything you guys complained about, this is the stats I've got to back up all of this." Obviously, both of us still think that we want to see Amari play more than 19 minutes a game.
Absolutely.
Obviously, a lot of that was foul trouble in this one. But somebody who keep even with the injuries coming back, still played 34 minutes in this game. Kobe Brea, really, I mean, obviously didn't shoot the ball well, 1 of 6 from 3. But man, I thought he just gave you a lot extra outside of that. 9 points, was able to drive to the rim a little bit, had some tough finishes, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and only 1 turnover. Got you a steal. Was playing. He's been really good on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's
Yeah.
been something that hasn't really been talked about as much lately. He's giving you all those extra things that, especially earlier in the season, you just weren't getting. To where if he wasn't hitting those threes, he was just a liability on the floor. Kobe's really turned into a much better overall player, even though his 3-point percentage seems to keep going down week in, week out. But obviously, with Lamont and Jackson getting back out there, hopefully he's going to be getting more open looks.
Yeah. If you told me, back in December, like there's games where Kobe shoots 3 of 10 from the field and 1 of 6 from behind the arc, I would say, well, he probably didn't give you anything, and it's probably just an awful game from him. But I agree completely. I thought he played really well. I mean, team's leading rebounder. Like I said, I thought there were some moments in the first half where he really kind of kept you afloat when, some other guys weren't playing well and, Jackson was out, injured. So I thought he played really well. And then even after the game, I was listening to some of the Tom Leach and Jack Gibbons kind of recapping it, and Jack gives out his defensive MVP every game, and he gave it to Kobe Brea. Like, I don't know if you would have told me before the season there will be a game where he was our most valuable defender at any point, like,
Yeah.
I would have called you insane. But I mean, he's worked his tail off on that side of the floor, and he's becoming so much more of a all around player. And I don't know. Maybe the injuries were kind of a blessing in disguise for him because he had to take on more of a role than just a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. But I mean, he's really impressed.
Hopefully it's a blessing in disguise for, this whole team. You're
Yeah.
talking about guys getting minutes that they weren't used to. I mean, just think about how much better Travis Perry looked in this game as opposed to how he looked earlier in the season when he was forced into that role. Same thing with Trent Noah. I mean, if we would
Yeah.
have told you, even in this game, 25 minutes combined between the two of them, and it wasn't like either one of them were liabilities in this game. Travis Perry had 5 points, and he's shooting that three a lot quicker than he used to. I'll tell you that. I mean, he's looking for a shot finally, and a guy who shoots like that, obviously, I think he's only shooting like 37% on the year, which is still not bad by any means. But it's good to see him, not being as hesitant because, somebody who else isn't as hesitant, Brandon Garrison from three. If I can get Travis Perry to shoot as much as Brandon Garrison from three, I think we'll be just fine with it.
Yeah, I mean that one, Travis, the one that Trent kicked to him. How about that play just for a second? Your two freshmen from Kentucky, Trent Noah, absolute hustle rebound, grabs it, makes a play, makes a no-look pass into the corner to Travis Perry, and I think you've talked about it a time or two. Like, there's guys like on this team that just got to be ready to catch and shoot. And like earlier in the year, it felt like Travis was never really catching the ball in a position just to hurry up and get it up. That one last night, the second it hit his hands, he was letting it fly and rip nothing but net. I mean, that was a huge sequence there in the first half. I think we were only up one at the time, and the Oklahoma what they did have of a crowd was kind of starting to get into it, and huge hustle rebound that led to a wide open three. And yeah, if Travis can keep catching the ball in a ready to shoot position, I agree with you. If he can shoot BG's numbers, shot attempt wise, I think we'd be in a good spot.
Yeah, and BG's shots looking nice as of late. I mean, he's
Yeah.
always had that, and I think that's the thing for us that has frustrated us so much about Brandon Garrison is that you see all of the tools to be a good
Yep.
big in the SEC. He's got the shot, he's got lateral quickness, he's got the bounce, and he's got a big enough body to where he can be physical. I mean, I think he's listed as heavier than Amari is, and Amari's a very physical center. So when we say all these about Brandon Garrison, it's almost like what you were talking about Amari in the beginning of the season.
Yep.
The reason we're so critical of him is because we know it's there. And especially if you're getting this to where you can run Amari and BG at the same time, I think that takes this team to another level, especially if you can have Andrew Carr kind of be that guy that comes and, just gives you a steady offensive threat when you're getting guys rest. As we've talked about those line changes that we do and the big substitution patterns that we haven't liked, I think that might be a way around it if you can get this Brandon Garrison, game in, game out. But the biggest problem with that is that it seems like you mentioned, there's one game and then you don't see him again until 6 games down the line, which I think this was his 6th game down the line. So I think he finally cashed in on that one. Brandon Garrison, obviously, 12 points in this game, 2 of 3 from 3, 5 of 8 from the field, 4 rebounds. And, they gave him the block for that on the final play. I still don't know why they gave him it. Otega got a piece of it first, but with how BG played, I'll let him have it. Otega got the game-winning, layup. I'll let Brandon Garrison have that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I don't know too many people that have been more critical of Brandon Garrison than myself over the past, month. So I'm gonna give him a lot of props. I mean, he was phenomenal last night, especially in the second half. He did some things, in the first half that I didn't love. There were some moments, but you know what? I'm not gonna harp on him because of how great he played in the second half, and he's earned a day off of getting criticized. But I mean, everything, like, I know I've said it multiple times on here, like, the guy was projected to be like the 43rd pick before the season, just simply based off the tools. So to your point, all my frustrations with BG all year have just been like, we know he can do it, and he just hasn't for whatever reason. It just hasn't clicked. But that second half last night was everything that BG can be, right? Like, that sequence where he got a block, ran the floor, and I forget which guard hit him for like a run out dunk. Like, that's special stuff, and like that's stuff that like pure athletes do, and he's obviously one of them. And if you tell me he's a guy that can shoot 2 of 3 from behind the arc along with those other tools, like, everything on paper tells you like this guy could be a borderline first round pick in the NBA, and it just obviously hasn't clicked. But last night he was phenomenal. I thought he gave you everything you need it. He ran a little white hot, as Mark Pope likes to call it a couple times. I mean,
A little bit.
he was, yeah. I mean, he he's incredibly lucky we didn't get a technical on that final play. And then I don't know if you if you saw, obviously the handshake line, and before that, he was yelling some words that, I'm not going to repeat here. And I saw him do the old hold the L, and so I mean he was obviously fired up, but I mean him and Moore were just going back and forth all game. So I mean I'm not going to say like I don't get it, because back when I wasn't very good and played basketball back in middle school, I mean I was known as kind of the fiery guy that would get fired up too. So I mean I get it. I got a couple technicals in my day, and he avoided those at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's so good to see from BG because, especially in 27 minutes to play that well. It's one thing to do it over a 12-minute span, but over 27 minutes where the team really needed you.
Yep.
And something I thought was, I mean, his defense in this game, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and how many times did it feel like he got switched up on Sears and he just held his own?
Played well.
I haven't seen that from him all year. I mean, he's been getting blown by bigs, and this is a potential lottery pick, first round pick that we're talking about that he was keeping with side to side. And really, especially on that last possession, did it for almost 15 seconds until they, forced up a late shot to go to the free throw line.
Yep. Yeah, I mean he was great every aspect. Like that second half, if Brandon Garrison, if that was the only half of basketball he played, like teams would be talking about taking him in the top 10. Like he was that good for that. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me how many minutes he played just in the second half, but however many it was, he was that good. Like, again, just like blocking shots, running out. I mean, when he would get a rebound, it felt like finally he wasn't trying to, we saw him try to take the ball coast to coast against Alabama. He wasn't trying to do anything like that. He got the ball out quickly after a rebound and just kind of understood his role of, now I'm going to run the floor, get down the lane. And there were multiple times guys hit him as he was cutting after, a fast break. And that's the best version of BG. And, fingers crossed, I'm knocking on wood. Hopefully we see it some more this year.
Do you think we saw the best of Brandon Garrison because he was able to play alongside Amari Williams, especially like that final 8 minutes? It allows him to play, in my opinion, allows him to play a little bit more free. He doesn't have to play that traditional center. He can go out and roam a little bit more, play a little bit outside. I think it allowed him to free up a little bit, play with a little bit more pace, go for more blocks. You saw him. I mean, I've never seen him contest so many shots, especially just in the last 5 minutes alone. I think it allowed him to play a little bit more free, at least on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe not offensively, but on the defense side of the ball, I do feel like we're best when we have BG and Amari out there.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I felt like he played pretty well too when Amari wasn't out there. I just felt like he brought it for whatever reason. Like his motor didn't stop running Wednesday night, and that's not something we've seen from him very often this year. And I don't know. I still, especially when Carr's fully healthy, I still don't want to see BG and Amari a ton together. I mean, the last month I've been saying that BG needs to play 6 minutes a game. So who knows? Maybe I'm just completely off. But yeah, I mean, do I expect this for the rest of the year? I don't. But I mean, if you got it, it's another level to this team just being unbelievable.
I'll just say with the bigs that we got coming into Lexington on Saturday with Auburn, we're going to need that kind of Brandon Garrison if we're going to win that game. Some other guys we're going to need to see step up a little bit. I mean, these 3 guys didn't really play too much. Ansley, I mean, I think you're starting to see his role starting to get more and more diminished on this team. Like you mentioned, starting to shorten the rotation down a little bit. I think Ansley's starting to see that the most coming out of his minutes. Only played 4 in this game. Only got up 1 shot, missed it, had an assist. I mean, really just Ansley's got to be able to knock down those threes when he gets in. That's really what he's in there for. It's almost a role that we thought Kobe Brea was going to be in earlier in the season. Ansley's got to be one of those guys, like you mentioned earlier, is the catch and shoot, ready to fire guy.
Yeah. Well, Ansley's issue, I think, minute-wise, is that outside of the 3 ball, he obviously doesn't give you a ton. And, if you look at the last however many games, him and Trent Noah haven't shot the ball well, right? Either one of them. The difference is Noah in 13 minutes can go grab you 3 rebounds and get a couple of those hustle rebounds. You just don't really see that from Ansley. So if you're playing 2 guys that are both kind of catch and shoot shooters, I understand Pope being well, the 9 more minutes are going to go to the guy that can also grab me a couple hustle rebounds while he's out there. So I think that's the biggest issue for Ansley right now.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. And, while we're on the topic of Trent Noah, 13 minutes in this game, didn't get up a shot, but like you mentioned, 3 rebounds, had a steal in there as well. And, that assist, like you mentioned, to Travis Perry was at a key point in this game. Because, this game had 9 lead changes, and the game was tied 8 times. So, this game went back and forth the entire way. That was a big, big play from Trent Noah.
Yeah, if Trent can just kind of give you that hustle, I'm fine with him playing 13 to 14 minutes, regardless of kind of how he's shooting. He's getting as many rebounds as Brandon Garrison, and even in this game as Amari Williams, and he's, doing it in 13 minutes of action. So, love what I've seen from Trent Noah, obviously outside of maybe just the scoring. Maybe we just need to play Tennessee again in the SEC tournament and get him get that confidence back.
Yeah. I will say, I don't think, when everybody is healthy, because in this game, think about just your starters. Obviously, Jackson only played 12 minutes, Amari only 19, yeah. Andrew Carr 19, and Lamont only 20. I don't think you can give Trent Noah 13 minutes because that means those guys aren't getting those. So, for this game, it's fine.
You might be able to if, like, Ansley's getting 0. I don't know if Pope would completely take Ansley's minutes away, but if you're telling me that the two of them are going to be combined for 13, and we might get to a point where it's just Trent getting 13.
Yeah, I think we'll probably get to a point where I think they're probably combining the two of them for about 10 minutes a game, just see who's running hot that game, especially because you're wanting Jackson to play probably 20 more minutes than he did in this game. Obviously, BG's numbers, we want to go down. We want to see him playing 26 minutes, so there'll be some more minutes to go around there. But like we've mentioned, we have no idea who's going to be good to go for Auburn. You would assume Lamont's going to be fine. Jackson, I don't know if that was part of the plan. Obviously, I think Coach Pope talks on Friday, so we'll hear some of that, see if he's going to be good. That's when the original injury report will come out. Last guy we haven't talked about, Colin Chandler. Really just didn't give you much in this one. 0 for 1 from the field, 6 minutes. Really, I thought this was actually probably his worst defensive game, too, in quite a while. Fears beat him off the dribble quite a lot. Really, Colin didn't give you much in this one and was kind of a step back in his upward trajectory that he's had as of late.
Yeah, to be honest, other than him getting beat a couple times by Fears, I don't really even remember him being on the floor. I'm honestly kind of surprised looking at the box score that he played 6.5 minutes. I thought it was more like 2 or 3. It was I don't have a ton of thoughts on him. To your point, obviously not his best game. A little bit of a step back, and I do remember just a handful of times where it felt like he just got absolutely torched trying to guard Fears one-on-one.
I will say he threw up that 3 ball, and I swear it almost hit the ceiling, and it looked like it was. He shot it from the baseline. He threw it up like 30 feet. It looked like it was going like 18 rows into the crowd on the other section. Barely hit the back iron. One of the weirdest shot arcs I've ever seen. Yeah. We've hopefully, it's probably more of an off-season topic, but if you can get Colin to start hitting that 3 ball, especially with the defense that he had been allowing you. Obviously, Fears, we just mentioned, lottery pick, first-round pick. He's got agility. He's going to be able to beat him off the dribble like that. Hopefully, Colin just continues to develop. I think you're probably going to see a lot more of, when Lamont and Jackson are back fully healthy, just switching him and Travis Perry out, just depending on the game, which one you need, offense or defense. So I think that'll probably be his role. Some games you'll see him play 8 to 12 minutes. Some games you won't see him play much at all. I think it really just depends on the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that's part of what, getting these guys back means, right? If there's a game where Chandler just can't play in it, you don't feel the need to play him. And he obviously got some good reps, and there might be a game where he's playing pretty solid defense, and you could use him for your point, an extra 8 to 10 minutes a game, and and there might be a time where he comes in and you realize he's not quick enough to stay in front of whoever he's guarding, and you don't have to play him.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Is there anything coming out of this game that you're thinking about leading into the Auburn game? Anything you're taking away from this one?
Outside of Otega Oweh dropping his nuts on Oklahoma, this is all I'm going to think about. What a performance.
Yeah, I think it was like Old Row Kentucky put out, Otega's face just on the state of Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma, he owns them. Brandon Garrison, obviously played a great game, went to Oklahoma State, so he played, his rival. Great to see those guys really just like take a next step in their games in this one. We got number 1 coming to town on Saturday. It's going to be a huge test. Auburn, obviously, great team. Coach Pearl, one of my favorite coaches of all time. I don't know how you feel about Coach Pearl, but give me what you think about Auburn.
Yeah, love Coach Pearl. This is probably the best team he's ever had, even including some of his really good Tennessee teams. But I don't even know if you can say probably. This is the best team he's had. This team is unreal. I've watched Auburn probably outside of Kentucky the most of any team. I've watched a lot of their non-conference games. They played a insanely tough non-conference schedule and pretty much ran through it. Besides when they went to Cameron. This team they're really good. I know we were talking before we hopped on here, and you mentioned how they kind of got up 20 against Ole Miss, and then they let them right back in it. But then they like I said, they just instantly remember we're the best team in basketball, and we're going to go on a 15-0 run and be right back up 25-30 against good teams like Ole Miss is. I know they're not playing great right now, but not a bad team, and
they killed us. So
they went on multiple runs of just destroying them, and when they're making shots, there's not a team in the country that can beat them. With the way they do everything else, if they're hitting 3-pointers, just shake their hand and hop on the bus and get ready for the next game.
And I think the biggest thing with Auburn is, especially if they lock down on the defensive side of the ball, I think that's where a lot of their lapses come from. Happened a lot, especially in that Arkansas game that they played. They just go through lapses where they're giving up easy buckets. It even happened in the Ole Miss game because, Ole Miss came back in that game
They
that.
do, but Arkansas, they still only gave up 60 points, so they could still
Well,
clamp you down.
Because Arkansas can't score. That's
all right. Well, then fine. Georgia only scored 70, and Ole Miss scored 76. Vandy scored 68. I do agree with you. There's moments where they just kind of get a little lazy, but then when they want to, and they'll lock you down, and then they'll go down and make threes on the other end, and they're the scariest team in college basketball, I think.
Yeah, and that was kind of to my point where I was trying to figure out what I was trying to say there was just that, when they are fully engaged on the defense side of the ball, I don't think there's a way that we can beat them on Saturday. But like I said, I think our only way for us to win that game is hopefully those defensive lapses are a little bit long, and that's for when a stretch for when we get hot. Hopefully Jackson's playing. That's a stretch where he can, throw in 3 threes back to back. Kobe's hot. His team's really gonna have to hit a lot of threes in this game to win this game. Because I'm gonna say it. I know you're not going to. I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire. You've been calling this a Kentucky win all year.
I have.
So,
I have.
Let me hear the positivity, because all I'm hearing from you this entire podcast, especially about the Auburn talk, is negativity, and I don't need it.
No, it's not negativity. They're the number 1 ranked team in the country for a reason, right? No, don't get me wrong. I've said it. I predicted before the season. I went back and predicted it. Right when we got into SEC play, and we quickly did those predictions. I predicted we would lose to Oklahoma and come back and beat Auburn, a week and a half ago. The biggest thing that worries me is Jackson going to play? And then now, there were reports of Amari was limping really bad after that game. You see that a lot, especially in basketball. Somebody tweaks their ankle, they're able to, have the adrenaline to kind of finish the game and play through. But after you sleep on it and you wake up the next morning and it's swollen the size of a baseball. I know we haven't heard Pope talk yet, or no injury reports coming out. I'm going to pick the Cats, and I'm going to pick them with the asterisks that Amari and everybody outside of maybe Jackson plays. But I don't love it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick Kentucky.
Yeah. If Amari doesn't play, Janiah Broome probably goes for 35 and 18.
It's going to be tough. He might get 30 even with Amari.
Yeah, he could do that, especially, Amari's been getting in foul trouble, at least a little bit more as of late. 2 of the past 3 games he's gotten into foul trouble. And, Janiah Broome's just good. 18.8 points per game, 11 rebounds. I do think, this team around him is a lot better than they get talked about. Like Baker Mazzara, I think he's outstanding. Yep. I love Tahad Pettifer. He's great as well. There's just so many good guys on this team. Like there's, how we feel bad going to the bench, playing Ansley for extended minutes. There's almost nobody on this Auburn team that could get extended minutes and be like, oh, that's who we got to exploit. For that reason, especially if we don't know if Jackson's playing, Lamont's still not 100%, and if Amari's not, 85%, gives it a go. I mean, it might be like 102-6.
Is that what's your score? Give me a score. Go ahead. Let's get to it. What you got?
Obviously, I mean, we're gonna start putting asterisks next to our scores. Every time we put scores out, the injury report comes out like 30 minutes later after we put them out there, and then we end up figuring out both guys are playing. That's what happened to us, at least for this Oklahoma game. But regardless if everybody plays, even though I like the matchup, I really do. I think, it's a style that Auburn might struggle with a little bit, just with how limited we are right now, how banged up we are, how much we haven't played together in a long time. I just don't see the Cats winning this one. I see us giving up like 94 points, losing 94-86 is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I don't obviously hate the prediction by any means, but yeah, I'll say Kentucky. Again, just style-wise, I've said it all year, so I'll stick with it. I'll say Kentucky scores 92, Auburn 89. Fun, high-scoring, fast-paced game.
All right, real quick, give me your MVP.
Let's go bounce-back game, Andrew Carr. It feels like every time he has a bad game, he bounces back with a good one.
All right, and I will take Kobe Bryant for my MVP if the Cats are able to get it done. Follow the Cats Talk Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere you can get your podcast. That being said, go Big Blue. More damn Eagle? No, get that out of here. It's the dumbest saying ever. Charles Barkley, I love you. Auburn sucks.
Go Big Blue.